The thing that really struck me about your movie was the performance that you got out of Mr. Sheen.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you guys have been friends for a long time. You met on Apocalypse Now, is that
Mm-hmm.
right? And you stayed friends.
We met during Apocalypse Now as kids. We were 11 years old or so, and we were pals. And over the years, I'd run into Charlie here and there. But when you make a friend when you're 11 years old, that's a friend you're always going to have. And that was that's how we've known each other. And so many years would go by, and I wouldn't see him. But whenever I happened to run into him, it would always be a nice thing because we shared that early friendship.
So how was that, directing a friend, the friendship?
It was great, particularly because I had his back and he had my back. When I wanted to cast Charlie, there were a lot of people that were uncomfortable with that choice. They felt it would be difficult to get insurance, which it was. It would be difficult to get a completion bond, which it was. And but I had this instinct, and based on my rapport with him, like if Charlie says he's going to do this and come through, he's going to do it and come through. So I knew that, and Charlie had my back too. He wasn't going to let me down, and if he had to stay up late learning lines or learning how to speak Spanish or whatever it was, he put that extra effort in. So I think it was very beneficial, and we had each other's trust, and I think that was a really valuable asset.
Just from knowing Charlie Sheen, can you tell us your favorite Charlie Sheen story?
Well, I had a story. I met a driver. I was actually going to Bill Murray's house with the script, trying to show him the role to interest him, and it was the driver that Bill liked so much and recommended to me. And Bill is a very generous tipper. So I asked the driver, I said, who's the most generous tipper you've ever had, just out of curiosity, figuring he would say Bill, because it was his usual guy. And he goes, oh, Charlie Sheen. So it was kind of humorous, because he had no idea that I was planning to use Charlie Sheen in this movie. But
Right.
What that says to me, and I can attest to it, is he's incredibly generous. He's given me he gave me a beautiful lighter recently and a watch, and he's just a guy who is super generous. He's very outgoing. He's very true blue. If he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. He's not a BS artist. If he wants to, he's not going to talk. He's not going to say something he doesn't believe. And I think that's why in all that public stuff that people responded so much, is that he never lied about anything. He's very straightforward, and that's a fantastic quality.
So a couple of details of the film stood out to me, and I just wanted to get your take on them.
Mm-hmm.
First was the bacon and eggs on the
Mm-hmm.
on the car. What's the deal with the bacon and eggs?
That was just a sort of a gesture. The guy's a graphic designer, and he's a very sensual guy that loves beautiful things. So when I asked myself the question, what kind of car would he drive, it was evident to me that he would drive a 1941 Cadillac Fastback. And when I thought if he would adorn it in any way, it seemed like he probably would, and if so, what would it be? And bacon and eggs seemed just about right, because it's far out and outrageous and doesn't have any meaning, but is just something he can do for the hell of it. So that's really the instinct of why he did that.
Cool. Hollywood history is littered with movies that take place inside the mind, and I just wondered what films for you were a reference point in making this one.
I'll tell you, but I'm curious of the ones that you're thinking of.
Kurosawa comes to mind, Dreams. I thought about Eternal Sunshine. What else? I had a list here.
No, it's interesting. I totally agree. It's true. There are a group of movies that I love and I keep kind of coming back to. One is Stardust Memories, the Woody Allen picture. All That Jazz is one of my favorites and relates to this movie in certain ways. Annie Hall is a similar story about a breakup and coming together, kind of told in not any logical order, but the order in which it occurs to the character. Yeah. So these are all things that I admire so much, and my movie, aspires to kind of relate to or be part of that style.
I would like to just list off a few names and just have you respond to how, if they do, relate to your movie.
Okay.
So the first name is Marcel Proust.
Well, Marcel Proust, of course, wrote Swan's Way and Swan's proper name is Charles Swan, although he spells it differently. So that wasn't an intention, but it was after the fact realization. I thought it was kind of novel, and I embraced it, but it wasn't by intention.
It wasn't. Interesting. Terry Gilliam.
I admire Terry Gilliam very much, just because he's so imaginative, and of course I'm a huge Monty Python fan, and so that he was connected and did all that visual work with them means so much to me. Very sexy, playful, fun. So in that way, I respond, feel like it relates to things I'm interested in.
So you didn't look to him though as a reference for the animated parts that show what he's thinking in his mind?
Not specifically, although I can see why you say that, and I didn't like study them or reference them precisely, but
Right.
definitely that sense of play and kind of freestyle animation that's sexy and playful totally relates.
Yeah. How about Federico Fellini?
Well, Fellini is one of my idols. His work is just at the top of the top for me in terms of being an inventive filmmaker. And through his work and things in particular, like 8½, shows what a movie can be, which is anything, and shows the freedom and the possibility. And I always, when someone does that so beautifully and successfully as Fellini does, it encourages you to go for it. It can be done, and movies are very full of possibility yet to be explored, and a sense of adventure that is worth going for it. And when you see movies like that, it shows you there is a way to do something that's full of imagination.
The last name I had for you was Woody Allen, and you kind of touched on that with Stardust Memories. The other movie I thought of was Deconstructing Harry.
Mm-hmm.
And can you just talk about Woody, how he's influenced you?
Woody Allen is just one of the great filmmakers of our time. We all know that. And a movie like Annie Hall is so incredibly constructed and made. It's so inventive and so funny and so touching. But it's something that I definitely have seen many times and tried to understand how it works, because it's kind of beguiling. But I have watched it with the sound off, with my notebook, and learned a bunch of things from it. Stardust Memories is a personal favorite. I'm always chagrined when it's sort of less known and considered not a successful movie, when it's so great and so funny and so witty and so imaginative. So people often haven't gotten around to seeing it. I say, oh, go see it because you won't be disappointed.
Yeah.
So that's one of my big favorites. And the photography and the mise en scène, the placement of the actors, the placement of the camera, the manner in which it's made is so high level.
Mm-hmm.
If you know about movies and you see that, it's hard to not be impressed.
That makes me think of another one of my questions, the placement of the camera specifically. I know Wes Anderson, he doesn't put the camera in certain positions, he won't do certain shots. And I just wondered if you're that way also as a director. Are there certain shots or angles rather, that you want to stay away from?
I'm very open. Wes is a very particular filmmaker, and it's true that he has a certain way of seeing things, and a shot that's maybe at an acute angle or with a longer lens, whatever, just he tends not to do. He's just not drawn to it, just not interesting to him. Mm. I don't really have those kind of prejudices or restrictions. I'm very open to whatever might come my way or might occur to me, but I do have some biases. I tend not to like a handheld photography. You don't see it in my work, particularly unless it's really called for. Yeah. I don't like steady cams. I admire just great movies with great steady cam shots, so it's an incredible tool, but I don't use that as a tool, generally speaking. Mm. And moving like crane shots and that type of thing, I tend not to use. There is a big crane shot in my movie, so where it's called for, but yeah. In my film, I used a very particular camera platform. It was an Elemac dolly, which is a old-fashioned dolly built in the 60s, Italian-made, very beautiful, very small. And I was excited to use that tool because it suggested certain shots, and it doesn't have a boom function. It doesn't go up and down while you're filming. So there are no boom shots in my movie because that's the tool I chose to use. So anyway, I'm interested in those types of things, the tools that you choose and how they inform the shots that you make. And in my film, because I had that dolly, which I bought on eBay incidentally, I was able to do a shot. There's a scene in a hospital with Bill Murray and Charlie, and it's a scene that goes over a few minutes and is a one-take thing. And that shot couldn't have happened without that dolly, because it's a very precise, very small profile with the center post.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I do have certain rules that I follow on that project where I'm using a certain tool, and I won't do a boom shot or whatever because I can't, and I embrace that.
I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Oscars this year, and I just wondered if you were nervous at all about the Oscars?
Well, it's thrilling to be up for an Oscar. I mean, it's totally mind-blowing, and it is a weird sensation because you want to be positive and think, oh yeah, maybe I can win. If people say good luck, or you're going to win, you want to embrace that. At the same time, you don't want to be disappointed or expect anything, and so it's a curious mental state where you want to just be optimistic enough to invite something to happen that you might win, and to also be relaxed enough to not expect anything, and to appreciate that being nominated is a huge honor and is something to savor. So I'm in that state of mind.
Did you go to the Oscars growing up with your father?
Here and there, I attended a few times, and it's always exciting. It's just, the ultimate movie celebration, and anyone who loves movies, the Oscars is a big part of your life. Watching that every year.
I wondered what your favorite film of your father's was.
Well, people ask that, and I tend to say Rumblefish because it's not one of the obvious things to say, and I love that movie. It was a really big part of my life. I was 16 when we made it. I was part of the film. My brother was involved. I was involved in a very deep way, and so not only is it one that you just admire, it's an abstract film, but the experience we had making it, and looking back on it, it's so daring, it's so imaginative and cool and beautiful, and so many great virtues it has that I feel like that's one that really stands out for me.
Yeah, that was a great one. What did you think of Brick, Rian Johnson's film?
I enjoyed it. I'd like to see it again. I feel like it's a type of movie that benefits from multiple viewings because it's kind of puzzling and stuff. But it was obviously had a lot of wit and smart writing and far out, and so those are all things that are positive to me.
Yeah, I like how he paid homage to Rumblefish with the music of that film.
Yeah.
So I just wondered what your take was on it. How about your sister's films? Which of those is your favorite?
It's hard to pick favorites. I don't really have favorites, but
yeah.
It's hard. Recent one, Somewhere, I feel like she really just nailed it. The tone and this kind of character study of this guy, and the sort of muted quality it had, and the time it takes to tell the story. I just really thought she nailed it, and I'm very proud of that one. But all of her works, really.
Cool. So if you could get any director to direct one of your scripts, who would that be and why?
From beginning of time, or
I was thinking anything in the future, but
a living director.
Living director.
Okay. A living director to direct one of my works. I never would have thought about that, so I have to digest it for a second.
Okay.
The Coen brothers, of course, are great filmmakers, so whatever they do, I'm just interested to see.
Yeah.
Wes, I'm a fan of his work. Alexander Payne is super talented, but it's hard. I'm just thinking of people I admire, so that's that list.
Yeah.
I probably would go a little crazier just because it's so odd to be asked this question. I should go with a more surprising. I would say Miyazaki.
Really?
That would be pretty cool.
That would be cool. Writing, directing, what do you enjoy most?
I'm just a fan of lots of things, and I get curious about something, and I'll jump aboard a project, and might work with Wes or work with Sophia. It just kind of happens by just being around and want to jump in, be part of something. You know, it'll be interesting because this movie, the Charles Swan picture, is kind of this is what interests me. This is the movie I chose to make. It was pretty hard to do in terms of lifting off the ground, getting the finance, organizing it.
Right.
And the degree to which people respond to it, and if I get an audience that check it out and you know, that becomes a sort of an endorsement, that becomes a kind of a credit that I could say, well, this movie had 500,000 people that saw it, or 1 million people that saw it, that you could sort of use that to become the leverage to make another movie. Because movies are very expensive, and without that kind of support, it's hard to continue. So part of me is kind of curious, depending how this movie gets received, that will become a kind of a bank account in which I could say, well, my last movie did this, I could use that and do another thing. So I'm in a sort of pensive state right now. I want to be open-minded to what might come my way, and I haven't really decided. But I would like to continue making films, and I want to continue to make personal movies and individual, weird, exploratory movies, but still appealing and for an audience.
Right.
And it's a kind of a curious thing that I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Ryan.
My pleasure. Thanks
Appreciate
for
it
doing
very
this.
much.
Yeah. Excellent.